Hello and welcome to another episode of Quarantine with Fulbrighters. And I'm quite excited about today's episode because our guest Izzah Zaman did a interdisciplinary degree from Carnegie Mellon. So I'm quite excited to know what all these disciplines are. First of all, how are you doing, Izzah?
I'm great, Shehzad. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So what is an interdisciplinary degree and how many disciplines was it?
So it was a lot of disciplines, and I think that's the reason I chose this program. And I think CMU is also known for its interdisciplinary nature. So the programs that I was a part of, it touched on public policy, management, and entrepreneurship, and then data science and data analytics. So it was pretty diverse in that sense.
Well, probably served you well now that you're an entrepreneur. So tell us about this website that you founded, an issue that faces all Pakistanis, Shadiyana.pk. What does Shadiyana.pk what does it do?
Sure. So Shadiyana.pk is like Food Panda for weddings. So what it means is we have all wedding vendors like photographers, makeup artists, and venues listed with us, and people can go to our website, choose their favorite photographers, look at their prices, reviews, and all the information they need while planning a wedding on one website. So we want to, make wedding planning easy for people so that they don't have to physically visit each of these venues and spend a lot of time, just messaging them back and forth for their prices and availability and asking out around for their reviews. We want all that information in one place for anyone planning a wedding so that the planning time can be reduced from 3 months to 3 minutes, and you can do it from the comfort of your home.
So it's not Food Panda. I assume Food Panda for weddings would be like a groom panda. That if you want a groom delivered within 30 minutes, you can just go. Maybe that's your next
Oh,
entrepreneurial idea. I would be the first to
that's
register. I even
that's actually very interesting and very innovative. I think we should definitely look
how
into this.
how much equity will I get to be one of the co-founders for having the
I
original idea?
think, yeah, I think a lot, the biggest chunk, I would say, because such an innovative idea. I don't think anyone has done it before.
Absolutely. I can also be an ambassador since I do look like a groom panda. So how did you get this idea? How did you start?
Right. So I wish I had some, story about I was sitting one day and then I had this idea, or some really good, or really inspiring story like that. But unfortunately, I don't have one. What I have is tons of brainstorming, thinking for months and months, what should we do? Me and my co-founder, Neelam, we are best friends as well. And we always wanted to do something of our own. We've worked in the corporate sector, we've done everything, you could do, and then realized that it's not meant for us. And we sat together religiously for months and months. We would dedicate hours every week on brainstorming what is it that we could do. And it was I think 300 400 ideas long list that we would think, and we would think about pros and cons. How big is the market? Does it align with our interest and expertise? And the ideas range from like flying trays to a pen that could act like there's this tool where you in Photoshop, I don't remember what it's called, but you can pick a color and then use that color picker tool. A real life pen that would act as a color picker, and so many flying robot, a lot of ideas like that. And then when this idea came, we thought this perfectly aligned with our interests. We wanted to be creative, we wanted to we wanted the market to be big enough, and we thought it was. Then it also aligned with our skill set, like we are both software engineers, so we could develop the website. We understood the nitty gritties and details of how websites are made, and so we felt like this was the sweet spot between all of our interests, and that's when we finalized it.
So how did this entrepreneurial spirit come to be? Were you watching a lot of Shark Tank in the US?
And, so entrepreneurial, I think I would say back in my undergrad, when I was in my third year, I was the batch president of my batch. Every year, a batch president was chosen in my school. I studied from Sikh's Nest. And so in that year, I loved it. I loved, arranging all kinds of events. I loved being creative, being innovative, managing huge teams. We were a batch of 300 people, and we would have, like, every team would be 50, 60 plus, and we would have, all these diverse events. So I loved doing that. And I realized, even though on the academic side, I enjoyed that as well. So I was always very conflicted about, what should I do? Should I really go dive deep into the coding side of things? Because I love doing that as well. And because, generally I think I like working a lot. I'm somewhat of a workaholic. So I thought all of my skills and interests, and, being able to be creative, being able to implement my own ideas, all of that would only be possible if I did something of my own. And I didn't have to think about all the bureaucratic processes of, who would I have to convince. I thought that's why, I think that's where the entrepreneurial spirit comes from.
Do you feel like we are a entrepreneurial averse society as well, and many people tend to go for the safer option of having a job in a company as opposed to founding something of their own? So how did you go against the grain?
Sure. Yes, definitely, Shahzada, I agree. I do think that there's a lot of, hesitation in taking up pursuits like entrepreneurship. And some of it stems from the lack of resources too, I would say, because if we look at the gender divide, for women, there are already so many other barriers that, thinking of entrepreneurship is a lot more difficult, I would say, because stepping out of their home is already difficult. Mobility, there's little public transport, so on and so forth. So for them, let's just think that it's already very hard for them to even do ordinary jobs, right? So for men, on the other hand, they also have this pressure to, be the breadwinner, to earn, to support their families. So then entrepreneurship becomes somewhat of a privilege, I would say, if you have uh, support from your family, if you don't have to really worry about supporting them. So it's somewhat, I do feel it's somewhat of a privilege in that case, because recently we've seen more and more investments coming in Pakistan, which should make it easier, I would say. But if you don't have any of those, then I would say also it's somewhat of a privilege. And those are some of the hurdles that naturally prevent people from really thinking about entrepreneurship.
So how did you select this field? Did you just think that Pakistanis spend a lot on weddings, so this is the perfect place to start a company where we can make a lot of money?
Uh, Honestly, no. I would say yes, Pakistanis do spend a lot of money on weddings, and I personally feel they shouldn't, but that's just my opinion. But why I chose this field, because I thought it was it's about time. A lot of things are being digitized. So if you look at the grocery market, that's being digitized with Airlift, Grocer, and many other companies. If you look at the agriculture market, that's being digitized, and a lot of other markets. Wedding planning industry, we felt, me and my co-founder, that nobody has really done a serious attempt at digitizing it and improving the processes. In the world, it has been done. So in the US, there's the Knot. In India, there's Wed Me Good. But in Pakistan, we did not have a platform like this. So it was about time, someone did an attempt, us, we thought we could, make an attempt in doing that. And it was a big enough market. We also wanted to be able to be creative around things. And the wedding industry, shadi, wedding planning, has a lot of aspects to it. There's the social issues about weddings, like, for example, dowry, body shaming, and then skin tone. So many of them, regarding rishtas, regarding, so we thought we could also touch upon them. Then we also thought, so since there's no digitization, and a lot of people can plan weddings from the comfort of their homes, if this idea is implemented correctly, and if it gains sufficient traction. So those are the factors that influenced our decision.
This is what a Fulbright Masters does. I would have assumed that you just watched Band Baja Bharat and thought, this, I can do this on a website. I can make this happen. So all the social issues that you touched upon, how are you combating that?
So we do. So we actively write Instagram posts about all these social issues. We write blogs about all these social issues. For example, and there are some taboo topics that nobody talks about. Those are very hush hush. Anything remotely sexual, people would, even though it's a very natural process, people would just not talk about these things. So we do have very educational, informational blogs. For example, if you're getting married, how can you prepare for your wedding night? There's a blog that's on our website, and it's like a very helpful blog. Not everyone's born with this knowledge, so people need resources. And then we also have blogs on how skin tone, it's okay to be your skin tone. There's no need. We have this, some people call it Gora complex. So we also make posts about that. We mainly through Instagram, and then through our blogs, we actively talk about these social issues.
What's your opinion on brands having this corporate social responsibility? Do you feel like, is it just something that helps with marketing, or a brand with the ethos should be involved in talking about social issues? Because when big brands do it, it often feels fake or performative, as opposed to them being actually interested in the issue.
Right, right. So when big brands, I would definitely like them to do more of it, because we have an example of, for example, Fair and Lovely, which was called Fair and Lovely for a very long time. And they could get away with it in their South Asian markets, because here people were not as aware of, how wrong is it to look down upon a skin color, or ask people to, or encourage a certain sort of, complexion. And so they were getting away with it for a very long time, and they were okay with it. But with the recent incident, the George Floyd incident in the US, they experienced a lot of backlash in these markets as well, because people there were more aware. So I'm not sure if they do it, what are their reasons for do it. Of course, brands want profits, and there are certain sorts of messaging that gets them those profits. But I do believe these people, all these brands, because they're so big in the first place, have a social responsibility to address these issues and not encourage them or propagate them. So yes, I don't know what their motives are, but it'll be great if they're more ethically aware, and their motives are more derived by ethics and corporate social responsibility.
So, as an entrepreneur, the barriers we've already spoken about and the struggles that you might have faced, to our prospective listeners who are maybe thinking about their own ideas or starting their own companies, what are some of the lessons that you learned the hard way that you can teach them?
The hard way. So I think the first one I would say is, I have quit my 9 to 5 job to work 24 hours a day. So be prepared for that. It is not going to be easy. It sounds good, I think it's almost fancy these days to be an entrepreneur, but it's actually 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. It's a lot of hard work, so with our case, for example, if our vendor asks us to visit them on Sunday 6 p.m. and it's my birthday that day, I don't have a choice. I have to visit them, because we can't, it's very hard to get to the decision maker, and if the decision maker is asking you to meet that day, you have to be there. You have to let go of other commitments or other anything else that you had planned. So it's a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, and only if you're willing to put in that kind of energy, I would say, then go for it. And when we were starting this, the statistics are not on your side. 90% of the startups fail. So be very aware that the probability of you succeeding is very less. So don't be demotivated. You just have to keep fighting. It's an uphill battle. People would say no. People would say all kinds of stuff. So be very prepared for those things. Whenever, we make a post that we are doing this on any forum, for example, there's some Facebook groups, and there will be people who'll say this is a great idea. And then there will be people who will use very strong words against it, that, this is useless. So be very prepared. You'll get all kinds of opinion, but also be very receptive, because your knowledge is limited to whatever you have experienced so far. And when you work in a specific domain, people you come across, keep listening to what they have to say. Because for example, when we conduct sales, it's going to sound a little weird, but I'll still share it. When we talk to these parlors, sometimes they would not take us seriously. We'll go to the reception, they won't take us seriously. They'll be like, acha ye do bachiyan aa gayi hain. I'm not very tall, I'm 5 feet, so people don't sometimes don't take me seriously. So wo aise they won't, they won't listen to me. And then once I was going with my bhabhi, and she observed this, and she said, you should try speaking in English with that lady. I was like, why? I said, because she told me, because these people would only take you seriously if they think, you know something that they don't. And if you talk in English, then it will look like that, and that works. So, these are tiny things that we keep. It's a lot of hit and trial. You just be very receptive, be very open to the advice you get from anyone. And I think that's all I would have to say. Of course, every day is a challenge, and we're just starting out. We don't know what will Shadiyana be in a few months, but what we can do is keep working hard and try to learn as much as we can every day.
So your advice to entrepreneurs is, don't be demotivated, but there's a 90% chance you will fail.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many social issues, and everybody can only tackle one at a time if they're actually committed to that one. Even the English thing, it's such a signifier of social class, and it's problematic in its own way if somebody who doesn't understand English and you're trying to speak in English with them. But one social issue at a time, I guess.
Right, bilkul. Agreed. Yes.
So how do entrepreneurs make sure they're not part of that 90% and they're part of that 10%? What are some of the key characteristics that you think an entrepreneur should have? Because I feel more often than not, it's not about the idea, it's about the entrepreneur.
100%, yes. The idea, like I said, it's just 1% of the entire thing. The execution is the main part. So some things that people can do. Most startups fail because they build a product nobody wants. So one thing, I think the first and foremost thing you'd want to do as an entrepreneur is to ensure what you're building is something people want. And how can you do it? There's a very simple formula. You talk to them. You talk to your customers, people who are going to pay you, people who are going to use your product. You try to understand their pain points. Talk to 100 people before starting building the product. So yeah, I was lucky in that regard. When I was starting out, it was just an idea that summer, and we had and I talked to I was in the US at that time. I sent an email to Open Silicon Valley, which is Organization for Pakistani Entrepreneurs in North America, and I told them I have this idea, and I'm looking for support, and it'd be great if I could talk to you. And when I talked to them, and they said, have you talked to anyone? I said no, but I do believe it's big need. I've experienced it. They said, you need to talk to at least 100 people before building the product, before even designing it. Because when you think you know everything, but you don't. Everyone's different. Your customers, their personas, you will only figure it out once you've talked to people. So start with interviewing at least 30, and I would say I would recommend 100 people, and keep documenting all of it. Go back to it and see if this is the product you're building, what is it that they would want to see in it. When you talk to them, they'll mention what pains they encountered. So that initially the first MVP, or the minimum viable product, which is just the bare bones starting product, should come from that customer discovery, from that research. Whatever everyone was saying that this is what they want, build it, and then go back to them and see if they would want to use it. If ideally, if you can also check that if they would want to pay for it, because sometimes people would say, oh yes, that's a great idea. They might even just be courteous and say that, but you only know if they're being serious when they pay for it. And for anyone to run a business, you need to be able to generate money, because that's what will sustain your operations. Even if you feel very strongly about an idea and think that maybe I want to do it for free, but for a business you need to make money just to sustain your operations, even if you're not looking to make a lot of profit. So see if people are willing to pay for it, and then these are the first steps. So once that's figured out, you've seen people are paying, then from what we've encountered in our journey, then we started looking at optimizing it, scaling it. What are the operations that we can do? And that's how our process was. Like, we did not raise a lot of investment early on, because we thought we would want to make our product a little mature. And so that's where we are right now. And I think those are the few steps I do think that can improve your chances of not being in that 90% at least.
You also mentioned that in these Facebook groups, sometimes people say mean things, but how do you take the constructive criticism from that? Because it's one aspect that you're talking about is making sure that there is a customer for it, but then there is also training the market. So for instance, if I talk about online retail, maybe people were skeptical about buying large electronics over the internet a few years ago in Pakistan, and now billions are spent on certain sale days in Pakistan because the market has been trained or been taught or been educated. So for something like this that you're doing, I'm assuming when you first encounter people, they're a bit skeptical of arranging their wedding in a venue that they've never seen, or trusting a vendor that they've never seen themselves or they've never spoken to themselves. So what do you do to, train or educate the market?
Right. That's a very good question. And I think in our initial customer discovery, whenever we'd ask people, what are some of the things that would prevent you from using a platform like this, a lot of people said trust. If we can't trust the website, we won't use it. And I said, and then I probed a little more. What do you mean you can trust a website? And then people started giving me some hints, like, some of the websites, when you open them, it says not secure at the top left. And they say whenever we see that, we would just not use that website. And then another one was, sometimes unfortunately our local websites do not have a very good UI UX design. So people said, if we see at a design and it looks like it has been made on some not very good websites, or not much effort has been put in it, then we won't use the website. Then people said, if there are a lot of ads coming up, and some things like this. So because at this point transactions are not happening through our website, so the level of trust that we require people to have in our platform is not that high, and people are using it for that reason. We've got those points covered. It's secure. We think we got a nice UI UX design, so that's going well for us. And now when we will have transactions incorporated within our website, that is going to be the biggest challenge, to build that trust. And we do feel at this point we are laying that foundation, that we are so that people have started using the website. We have a lot of active users on the platform, and then it's an incremental process when they see that, oh, this website has now introduced the transactions or bookings, which already has a reputation built. Then we hope it'll be relatively easier. But of course, getting people's trust, especially when they're making huge transactions, is going to be a huge challenge, and we'd have to actively combat whatever objections we encounter from the users along the way.
I think one of your biggest struggles is recurring customers. If I use Food Panda, I can order a meal every day. But if I'm planning my wedding and I have a great experience at Shadiyana, I'm hoping I never have to use it again.
Right. Yes, that's actually very interesting. So our business model is subscription based. What happens is, the customer planning a wedding does not have to pay anything. Our business comes from the vendors. They pay us a listing fee every month, kind of like Netflix. You get a subscription, you stay listed. For the other good thing about what you said, that if you're planning a wedding, hopefully you won't have to do it again. We in Pakistan are a collectivist society. So chances are you just don't plan your own wedding. You plan your cousins, your friends, and so many other people's wedding. You get to have a say, or at least, some advice in that. So that's what we've experienced. Even if, you're done with your wedding, and if you had a good experience, you're likely to recommend it to other people within your social circle who would be planning a wedding.
It's also probably about building it. I'm assuming that larger things like venues, you probably don't get a lot of business from there. But smaller services like a photographer or parlors where hopefully nothing wrong happens, but in case something wrong happens, it doesn't put the entire wedding in jeopardy. So what are some of the services that you get your primary business from?
Right. So very interestingly, what you said was our initial guess, that this is what would happen. Photographers would be very easy. So because our revenue model is more B2B, it's the vendors who pay us
Mm.
and not the customers. So, and they pay a listing fee. They're not paying fee for the transaction that happens. So in that case, what we experienced, however, and we were very surprised to see that the biggest chunk of our revenue, I would say, comes from wedding venues, because right now they're not tech savvy, they're not
Mm.
available on digital platforms. So they, and then the process of getting to a venue, finding their prices, it's so hard that they were the most eager ones to be on our platform. Photographers as well, but if we look at the market, their willingness to pay is not as high, because of course they don't make as much money as these venues do. Their one event is like worth a lot. So that's what we've experienced. Venues have been our biggest customers so far, and then makeup artists are good too. Their willingness to pay is also very high.
So you're so well informed about the field of entrepreneurship. How much of this comes from the Fulbright Masters or the Fulbright experience? What did you learn there that you've brought back and used in your everyday life?
Very interesting, Shehzad. If I tell you the personal statement I wrote for Fulbright, it said all of the things I'm doing right now. It said that because US is like the torch bearer of entrepreneurship, I want to go there, I want to experience what is it that they have that encourages entrepreneurship so much. Because if we look at all, like 90% of the startups, any big name, Facebook, Google, whatever you name, um, it came from the US, right? So I wanted to know what is it that encourages it so much there. And I think when I went there for my masters, I did see a lot of encouragement. They support every single idea. I remember in my entrepreneurship class when I was sitting, and there were a few ideas that people pitched, and I thought, they I personally did not like them a lot, and I thought they are not as useful. But the instructor would equally encourage every single idea, would provide all the possible support they could. And that's also something very different that I experienced, because somehow, unfortunately, I think in my experience within some of the classes I've had here, there will be sometimes this winner loser dynamic, that, oh, if someone's doing well, more attention would be given to them. So there I realized every idea is good if it gets support, if it gets the right mentorship, and nobody should be discouraged. And they also provided resources. Some of our initial funding came from my university, that really provided us with the force, I would say, or with the encouragement and motivation to start actually pursuing it. So I think the culture plus the resources they provide, we're still in touch with them. We have like a meeting once a month or once every 2 months, where we update our CMU mentors on, this is how we're doing. And they have extremely good feedback on how we can improve things from the current state that we are in.
It's underrated how important networks are, whether that be your alumni network, whether that be the Fulbright network. So for a lot of prospective students who have great ideas and are thinking why we should do a degree or why should we do a Fulbright masters when we can just start our company today and start making money, what would you say to them? What would be the sell that you should go and actually pursue a master's in entrepreneurship or business, and how that will help you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Right. So I do think that so because the probability of you failing is 90%, you would want to do everything you can to reduce that probability. And some of the things you can do is acquire the required skill set for entrepreneurship. A lot of people do say that, oh, entrepreneurship does not come from books, you have to experience it. That's great, but it doesn't harm you if you know the theory behind it. So if a situation comes, you don't have to start figuring out from scratch how to respond to this situation. So I would definitely encourage them that if you want to reduce that probability and increase your odds of being successful, do acquire every skill you can, because you're going to need it. I graduated as a software engineer from my undergrad, But now I have knowledge on sales, marketing, SEO, web development, all of these things, because they're required for my startup. So acquire as much knowledge as you can, because it's going to help you. And then if you go to the US, the network you get from there, the resources you get for there are going to be unmatched. You can't get them in Pakistan, not because US is great, maybe it is. The thing is, they're very rich. And they've built it over time, so the resources they have as a country would be a lot more naturally. So make full use of them when you are starting off. And if you get the chance to get a Fulbright masters, I would highly recommend it before starting your own startup.
It's always lovely to talk to Fulbrighters and learn from them. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Hopefully, at least one entrepreneur will be born after listening to this. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone listening. We'll be back again next week with another guest on Quarantine with Fulbrighters. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.